Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And hello again, everybody, and welcome in to yet another edition of Tider Insider TV, as just mentioned, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Visit Tuscaloosa. I'm Gary Harris. Of course, he's Rodney Orr, and thank you for tuning in. Well, we're kind of in that little bit of a lull, Rodney, if there is such a thing, because Alabama has been off since the SEC championship game. They're going to start back practice here in a few days, start getting ready for the Rose Bowl. But there is still a lot happening, mainly recruiting. Nick Saban, if you follow social media, Rodney, I said this earlier on my radio show. I've said it out on social media. There's a lot of buzz from people. I'm not saying anybody that matters, but there's a lot of buzz out there that Coach Saban might hang it up after the college football playoff. But all I can tell you is I don't have any inside knowledge, but just watching him recruit, travel these miles, California one day, Mississippi the next, Georgia the next, Florida. You know, he's recruiting like a guy who certainly is planning on coming back, Rod. And there's some big news that we're going to lead off with, and that is in regards to Ryan Williams, who is a five-star recruit and the number one five-star recruit in the class of 2025. Rod, I guess we can say now he's the number one recruit in the class of 2024 because yesterday, as expected, he reclassified from 25 to 24. He'll now sign in February. He'll enroll in the spring or after school, and he'll be eligible to play for his new team this coming season. Of course, he's been committed to Alabama since October of last year. Now, listen, you and I have seen a lot of great high school football players. I'm telling you, man, it's a short list to find anybody that's better than Ryan Williams. I mean, maybe David Palmer, maybe, some guys here and there, but he's special. As a junior, caught 72 passes for 1,324 yards, 19 touchdowns, rushed for 261 and 7 scores, threw a touchdown pass, returned 2 kickoffs, and a punt for touchdowns. With his help, team went 14-1. They did lose in the 6A state championship game to his potential future teammate, Jalen Mbakwe of Clay Chalkville, who had a big game as well. But in the 6A championship game, 343 yards, 4 touchdowns in that 31-28 loss. Rodney, he is a special football player, as I said, committed to Alabama for 14 months. But that doesn't mean other schools aren't continuing to recruit him. And he's one of those guys that, you'll worry about it right up until you get his name on the dotted line.
Yeah, you will. Gary, it's already starting. I mean, supposedly he's going to be at Auburn this weekend. I think this is going to turn out to be a little bit like, you remember Najee Harris's recruitment? I mean, that kept going back and forth. He was committed to Alabama since he was a sophomore. People said he was going to end up at Michigan. And again, I think it's going to kind of be one of those recruitments. But, he's a guy, like you said, Gary, he's electric. He's dynamic. Watching
that 6A state championship game with him on one side and Mbakwe on the other, and you're thinking, my gosh, these are arguably the two premier playmakers in the country, and they could be on the same team as freshmen next year. You look at Mbakwe playing quarterback because that's where Clay Chalkville needed him, but he probably is going to play corner at Alabama, and you look at his ability to make plays. He's a guy, Alabama doesn't have a lot of two-way players because they have so much talent, but he's a guy I could still see sticking him on offense some, put him and Williams out there at the same time on offense. Man, that's a scary proposition for a defense.
Yeah, that's right. I assure you this. Look, they're not going to be short of kick return specialist opportunities there for these guys in terms of being, special players, handling the ball in different ways. But I think Mbakwe, like you said, I do think he probably ends up in the secondary. But again, this is to be able to have these kind of players. And look, it's not just those two. I mean, they're recruiting really well. They've got some other guys that committed at the wide receiver position. Rico Scott's a really great player out of the state of Pennsylvania. So they're doing extremely well.
And, you mentioned there's a lot of chatter that Williams may go to Auburn this weekend for the USC-Auburn basketball game. Talked that LeBron might be there to watch his son Bronny play. But he did stay over in Tuscaloosa after the 6A state championship game. In fact, he visited with a long time on the field with Mbakwe. Then they Zoomed together. So, listen, I still say this. It doesn't mean he won't sign somewhere else. But in all my years covering recruiting, and you more diligently than I have, more times than not, the school that you commit to and stay with is usually who you wind up signing with. Nobody knows for sure because, again, he doesn't have to do anything until February. But I feel good about where Alabama stands with Ryan Williams.
Yeah, I think so. And, again, I think T-Rob, Traverse Robinson, of course, is, certainly involved in that recruitment. I think he has a really good relationship with Ryan Williams' father. And, Ryan Williams' father played at Auburn for a short time. He wasn't there his full career. So I think that has a lot to do with some of the speculation. But certainly I think when you're Hugh Freeze, you're Auburn, this is a guy that you target that if you could somehow sway him, I mean, obviously that would be a major coup for you. So, again, you expect it to go down to the wire.
All right, the countdown to the December signing day is on. It's coming up here in a little more than a week. And in addition to Williams being on campus over the weekend, 3-star linebacker Tristan Jernigan out of Tupelo, Mississippi. Now, this guy's been committed to Texas A&M, but we know that not only are current players leaving Texas A&M, a lot of their commits are after what happened with Jimbo Fisher. He's a guy that Ole Miss has pursued as well. He hasn't shown a lot of interest in Ole Miss. I said only rated a 3-star, but Alabama really likes him. He's athletic. He's an excellent student, and Alabama's putting the full court press on Tristan Jernigan.
Yeah, no, I think he's a really good player. I mean, obviously, and, talking to some people out in Texas A&M, look, I know with Jimbo Fisher, they certainly made a living with NIL in terms of using that in recruiting. I've talked to some people out there through some of the contacts that I have, and they said, look, they're that's kind of been a pitch that they've used with Tristan Jernigan. So will he flip? We'll see, and I certainly Ole Miss would like to have him as well. But like you said, Gary, I think he is a guy to really watch. Made that official visit this past weekend. It went really well.
Yeah, you see number 11 there in your video, and he's your modern-day linebacker. He can run sideline to sideline, built a lot like a safety. Yet it's got the power to put the pop on you. Can cover in space, so he's a good prospect. All right, other guys that Alabama looked at this weekend, of course, Canadian 4-star defensive end Steve Mbuama. We just call him Steve M here on the program. It's expected that he's going to commit to Alabama, pass rusher, as I said, north of the border. What's the latest on him?
Well, that's what it is. I mean, I really think that you're right there. I think we've been saying this a few weeks now, maybe close to a month, that we expected him, barring a late change, that he would end up at Alabama. I know that he probably will visit Mississippi State this weekend, but I feel really good about Alabama here. He's a guy that's probably 6'3", 270 pounds. Like you said, Gary, very athletic, raw, but a guy that has all the tools to develop a really good pass rusher.
And number 1 rated offensive tackle Jordan Seaton of IMG Academy, where Alabama's had a lot of success. Kind of threw people a curveball and went to Colorado, at least committed to Colorado. But Alabama's kind of got a guy that they like a lot. Eric Wolford, I'm told, likes this guy a lot. And this is Favor Edwin, 6'8", 290 out of McDonough, Georgia. Maybe a little bit of a project, but that's what offensive line's all about. 6'8", 290, long arms, guy that Alabama is now making an offer to.
Yeah, sometimes you talked about Jordan Seaton. Now, he's a guy that's a 5-star rated player. He's a guy that comes in, expects to start right away, has those expectations. You take a guy like Favor Edwin, 6'8", 290, unlimited potential. You mentioned the long arms. He has all the credentials in that regard. So, but he's a guy that understands, look, I've got to take a couple of years to develop. So these are the kind of guys I think that, especially now, Gary, you've got to get in your program.
All right, that's the latest on recruiting. Let's get to the coaching staff, because Alabama staff is always in demand, and as the Crimson Tide prepares for the college football playoffs, Nick Saban is also going to be on the radar as far as looking for a replacement for Coleman Hutzler. It's been reported, and we expect that the reports are accurate, that he will join Mississippi State. New head coach Jeff Lebby as the defensive coordinator in Starkville after the season. These two work together at Ole Miss, and again, nothing official, and it's everyone's expectation that Coleman Hutzler will do what other coaches have done at Alabama, stay through the playoff before he makes the move over to Starkville.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, nothing official on that. You kind of almost even hate to comment on it till it is, because these coaching things, the way they go. But we've been hearing this buzz about Coleman Hutzler, his relationship with Jeff Lebby, the new head coach at Mississippi State. They were together at Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin, so they certainly have a previous relationship, and look forward to seeing this thing become official, if it's going to be, because then all of a sudden Alabama has an outside linebacker spot open. It'll be interesting to see if this happens. How does Nick Saban kind of shuffle that staff? Does he bring someone out as an outside linebackers coach? Does he make some adjustments on his staff in other ways? Be really interesting to watch.
And it's portal season. Alabama's not going to have as many players go in right now as a lot of schools, because Alabama's in the college football playoff. But we already talked about a couple, including Ja'Cory Brooks, who was an outstanding wide receiver last season and an Iron Bowl hero from 2 years ago. And now a guy that I really like a lot, Anquin Barnes, is a defensive lineman at Alabama from Montgomery's Robert E. Lee High School. Came into the class of 2021. 6'5", 315. You're going to see number 59 here. You're going to see that combination of size and athleticism that's hard to find for a defensive lineman. In fairness to him, he waited 2 years, didn't play at all, played very limited snaps this season. I still think the guy can play. Alabama's fortunate to have a lot of good defensive linemen, but this is one of those guys that I just, if I were Alabama, I'd be trying to tell him to hang around, man, and battle for some more snaps, but he's in the portal and expected to transfer elsewhere.
I thought he flashed some in the 8A game. He showed a lot of power inside. He was good against the run, I thought, on a couple of plays that we saw in the 8A game. Played a little bit early in the season, the first game of the year. But you're right, Gary. Some people have said they really think maybe his potential is on the offensive side, but I'm with you. I think he flashed some on the defensive side.
Yeah, 6'4", 315, and, pretty good athleticism. That's what you're looking for in the defensive line. And sometimes, it's about developing the guys you have. I know you're always looking to recruit, but I've seen situations where you had guys on your team that when they transfer somewhere else, you're like, man, they're better than the guys they brought in. But we'll see what happens. Hey, the reality of the portal, Rodney, it's happening to everybody. You're going to lose some, and you're going to get some from the portal. All right, before we wrap this situation up, in regards to the portal, again, Alabama, I don't expect to have too many announcements before the playoff, but ultimately, how do you feel that's going to go for Alabama in terms of the number of players they might lose?
Yeah, last year they were in the teens. I mean, they're at 4 now, right? 4's announced, I think it is. So it wouldn't surprise me. I think a lot of guys obviously sticking around, going to play it out to the end of this season. But, I think it could get maybe close to that again. But I think Alabama used the portal to their advantage. I think they're going to have several opportunities to bring in some players, and I think they're going to make hay there.
Yeah, it's just the way of the modern world of college football. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama women's basketball is on a hot streak, a November, December to remember prior to getting into SEC play. And men's basketball is battling to be competitive against one of the toughest non-conference schedule in Alabama men's basketball history. I mean, they played number 3 on Saturday. They got number 8 coming up this weekend and number 1 next week. It's a grind for the Alabama men's team, and we will have the latest on the Tide. And we'll be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number right there on the screen, 205-348-WVUA. That's 205-348-9882. Stay with us. The only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV, will return right after this. And welcome back to TITV here on WVUA 23 with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Time to talk basketball. And the Alabama women's team is looking great so far this season. We'll have more on them in a moment. But first, Alabama men playing, as I said before the break, one of the toughest non-conference schedules. I mean, listen, they played Ohio State, they played Oregon, they played a very good Indiana State team, they played Clemson. And then Saturday, up in Toronto, Canada, Rodney, they ran into now number 3 Purdue, then number 4 Purdue, and fell in a tough one, 92-86. Zach Edey, the difference. But Mark Sears, man, 35 points for the Muscle Shoals native as Alabama hung in here the entire game. Like I said, could have won it. The difference was the free throw line. Purdue made 24 of 28. Alabama went 9 of 14. Edey just camps out in the lane. And listen, if I don't call 3 seconds on the guy, no, I don't know if anybody will beat him again. I mean, he just camps out. You can't do anything with him. Alabama at number 8 Creighton this Saturday. And then next Wednesday night, they play number 1 Arizona out in Phoenix. So this is crazy. And now it's time for Coach Talk. After seeing his big game against Purdue in regards to Mark Sears, Nate Oates believes that the former Ohio University guard from Muscle Shoals is an asset to the team and certainly can help this team pick up some big wins. He's a gamer, he's a leader, and he's getting it done on the floor.
Our whole team did a good job moving the ball. We had 20 assists. So, Mark's the guy that played a lot of minutes last year, that was in all those big games, that knows what it takes. And he's been pretty vocal. I've been pretty happy with his leadership this year.
Yeah, he needs to show those young guys and transfers what it's like to play in those big games. They're learning on the go. Women basketball, they haven't played a conference game yet, but what a non-conference schedule for Alabama, too. They beat Coastal Carolina 88-46 in the 5th grade fast break game, and then came back this weekend and defeated Stephen F. Austin on Saturday afternoon, or actually on Sunday afternoon, 74-69. So they are a team that is playing great. Or actually on Saturday, beat Stephen F. Austin, and then beat Sanford. They're just racking up the wins. They're 10-2 now. They'll play Louisiana Monroe Sunday inside Coleman Coliseum on December 17th. It's a tip-off for 12 p.m. Central Time on the SEC Network. Alabama women playing great, Rodney. And again, we talk about the men so much, but kind of quietly, Christy Curry's built a heck of a program here. They're expecting now to go to the NCAA tournament, and 10-2 is a great start.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you always want to get out of the gates fast, Gary. I think it's certainly a confidence builder for this team.
Yeah, indeed. Got to keep it going. And then when you get into SEC play, that's really when you're going to find out what you're all about. Well, still to come on TITV, the NFL is always about Bama in the NFL. We'll have the latest, and we'll get to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number 205-348-9882. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this timeout. Time for Bama in the NFL. Big one down in Miami last night. The King, Derrick Henry, that late touchdown gave the Titans a lead after they trailed 27-13 with 3 minutes to go. Tua, one last chance for the Dolphins, but he's going to get sacked on 4th down. And the Titans shocked the Dolphins last night, 28-27 the final. The Jets, of course, they don't have much of an offense, but they're really good on defense. One of the major reasons why is Quinnen Williams. Quinnen Williams had a huge game against the Texans. C.J. Stroud had been playing great. The sack there. Jets get the win 30-6. We talked about him last week, Rodney, but J.K. Scott just keeps getting it done. Watch this punt. This is from, inside his 5-yard line, and I want you to watch where this one winds up. I mean, wow. The only thing it didn't do was stay out of the end zone, from end zone to end zone. And out up in Cincinnati, Rodney, a guy that you just can't get away from him. Tony Brown stuck around the NFL for a lot of different teams. That's a pick 6, even though the Bengals won the game. A.J. got in that game after Browning went out and threw a touchdown pass. Yeah. But it got called back for offensive PI. So how about that one?
Bad luck.
Didn't show Bryce Young, man. Whoa. It's bad in Carolina. Not all his fault.
When you're a quarterback, if you don't have the players around you, it really makes it tough.
I almost feel sorry for him now. I mean, and then Mac, of course, is on the bench in New England, but Tua having a great year, Jalen doing okay, and A.J. McCarron. So it's 5 Bama quarterbacks in the NFL. All right, let's get out on our phone lines. We're going to start it off with Sammy up in Walker County. Hey, Sammy.
Hello, Gary. Rodney, how y'all guys doing?
Very well.
Great job. I was wondering about the recruiting along that lines, Gary, Rodney. Walter Nolan from A&M, is Alabama pursuing him? Has he already signed somewhere else? Thanks, guys.
Thanks. All right, Rodney. Let's start with Walter Nolan, who came out of the state of Tennessee and signed with A&M. Yeah, in the portal. I haven't heard much in regards to Alabama and Walter Nolan. Have you?
No, I haven't. And actually, late in his high school recruitment, you didn't hear much about Alabama. So I think right now he's looking at Ole Miss. I'm sure he'll look at Tennessee, other schools. Texas has been kind of involved with him a little bit. But right now, the most recent I heard, and I'm not saying he's going there, but certainly Ole Miss is trying really hard.
But another A&M defensive lineman that we've already talked about here on the show, L.T. Overton, is scheduled to visit Tuscaloosa this weekend.
Yeah, and LT used to live here.
Right.
I mean, his parents worked here at the university, and he's a guy that would have been the #1 player in the 2023 class, but he reclassified to 2022 and, gave up a year, as we talked about, like with Ryan Williams earlier. But he's a guy, Gary, was really highly touted defensive lineman.
All right, let's thanks for the phone call, Sammy. Let's get to Rick over in Brent. Hey, Rick.
How are y'all tonight?
Doing well.
Good. Can you explain to me why anybody would go to transfer portal before the last game and you might win the national championship like Brooks is doing?
Yeah, Rick, sometimes, and listen, just because you go in the portal doesn't mean you won't finish out the season. I don't think in Brooks' case, I don't think he is. But sometimes these guys, when they know they want to leave, they want people to know that they're available. And I know what you're saying. I can't imagine leaving a team that's playing for the national championship, but you got to understand these young men are looking out for themselves. But so there have been players that have, it's gotten out that they were going to go in the portal, and they still finish out the seaon with their current team.
I think Tyler Buckner is going to finish out the season. Of course, I think he's also going to play lacrosse, right, at Notre Dame. So, yeah, some do, some don't.
Yeah, listen, like we said earlier, Brick, it's just the new world. And, some of these guys, they're ready to start fresh. All right, we're going to get to the break, and we'll come back with more TITV, including more of your phone calls, 205-348-9882. Let us hear from you. Also, our email question of the day. Coming up next. Stay with us. Alabama Gymnastics getting ready to crank it up, and this past Friday night they gave the fans a preview with their annual Crimson versus White meet. Fans got their first glimpse of a squad that is loaded with talent. Alabama will open its season in Las Vegas at the Super 16 meet on January the 6th. Welcome back into TITV. Let's get to our email question of the day, brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. When it comes to heating and air conditioning needs, KDM Service Corporation serves your family like our family. How many Alabama players will transfer the portal or enter the portal? Tommy from Tuscaloosa, we kind of already hit on that, Rodney. I don't know that you can. All you can do is just garner a guess right now, I guess.
Yeah, look, I think Nick Saban's made it clear in the past, and I think we've seen, Gary, the players that have gone to the portal, a vast majority of them, and again, I'm not saying Alabama didn't want to keep them, wouldn't have liked for them to stay, but it's really not been a significant loss per se. Some people are really worried about who might go in. Right now, I mean, I think it's really unclear that it certainly, we haven't seen any indication that any big-time significant contributors are going to leave the program.
All right, let's get to our next email, and this is in regards to the Montgomery-Carver duo. How are James Smith and Quay Russaw progressing? Bradley from Prattville. We've seen James Smith play some this year. Big interior defensive lineman. Quay Russaw is an edge rusher who they're really high on. Rodney, that's a good question. How are they progressing?
Yeah, well, I think for a true freshman, sometimes the expectations are really blown out of proportion, obviously. I mean, I think when you come into a program like Alabama, you already have talented players that were highly recruited. I think you look at a guy like James Smith, physically, Gary, the next year in his development will be really big. Prepare him for next season. I think next season you're going to see James Smith really take off. The things we've heard about Quay Russaw in terms of his athleticism, the things he's doing in the weight room, he's a really high-quality athlete. So I think both those guys are really going to be strong contributors in the future.
Yeah, intense recruiting battle last year with Auburn to get those two guys to Tuscaloosa. All right, still to come on TITV. We'll tell you about Alabama getting ready to begin Rose Bowl practices. That's coming up next. As we mentioned, Alabama football players been on a little bit of break. They've been doing conditioning, of course, focusing on finals. But scheduled to get back to practice here over the weekend. And, of course, that means next week we'll kind of get back in a regular routine as they start preparing for the college football playoff semifinal at the Rose Bowl against number 1 ranked Michigan. Alabama will have media access next week, so we're looking forward to that. And, of course, we got signing days we mentioned coming up here very, very soon. All right, that is going to do it for tonight's show. A reminder, if you missed it or you want to catch it again, a replay tonight at 10:30 on WVUA 23, and catch it anytime at WVUA23.com. We're going to leave you, Rodney, with Alabama football's newest addition to its SEC Championship Trophy case, the 2023 SEC Championship Trophy. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching, everybody. This has been TITV. Have a good night.